Welcome to the Millionaire University podcast. I'm your host, Brian Gearin, with you today. And on this edition of the MU Pod, I'm joined by Joe McKay. He specializes in using LinkedIn to scale your online business from the ground up. There's way more to it, and we're going to get into it. But, Joe, first of all, man, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian. I look forward to the chat today.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun. It's funny that this is your area of your area of expertise, because when I started my marketing company almost 8 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, something like that, my very first client came from LinkedIn. From the first place I decided to use it for prospecting was LinkedIn, and that's where my first client came from. It
Love
was
that.
not easy, and the client lasted all of 3 months, but I learned a little bit about how to use LinkedIn to grow my business, and it's where I found my very first client. So I'm really excited to chat about all the expertise that you have and all the actionable advice that you can share with our audience today. And we will talk about how LinkedIn, it lends itself better to a few different areas of business. And today, a lot of what we talk about is going to pertain more to those of you who run online businesses. That can be anything from a digital agency to being a freelancer, email, a copywriter of any kind. Joe, you can fill in with however many examples we have
Yep.
here of different online applications for using LinkedIn, but a lot of our references will be in reference to more online businesses. So, Joe, let's jump right in. Tell us about your expertise and kind of how you got into writing on LinkedIn, doing ghostwriting, and really learning the ins and outs of LinkedIn. And we're going to run from there, my man.
Yeah, sounds good. So look, in 2022, if we go back a few years, my wife, who is French, was pregnant with our second child. I'm Australian. We were living in Australia at the time, but my wife, pregnant second time around, really wanted to give birth and I guess experience the growing of our family in France and be surrounded by her family. So we as a family were kind of at a crossroads with what to do with jobs and careers and houses and all that kind of thing, living in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. Made the decision early 2022 that I was going to quit my job in government in Australia. And we are going to do this. We're going to move to France and experience life in France for the birth of our son and kind of see what followed from there. So I found myself in early to mid 2022 without a job, with a bit of spare time on my hands in between bottles and nappies and all that good stuff. And found myself really without kind of, I guess, a professional outlet for the thoughts and the ideas I was having in my mind. My brain was getting overloaded with stuff. And so I started to kind of journal online, like just write stuff in my notes app and things like that. And then I started to think about where I could actually publish this stuff, like, and start getting it out into the world. And LinkedIn was the social platform that I really kind of had at the time. I started to show up in there and just share some random thoughts and ideas, and discovered guys like Nicholas Cole and Dickie Bush and Justin Welsh and some of those kind of original solopreneurs, I guess, and very big in the LinkedIn space, and followed my nose from there. Really started to kind of share more consistently, more regularly on LinkedIn, started to get some good feedback from my network, and kind of a light bulb went off. And I've always had, I think there's three things about me. I've got a very curious mind, got a bias to action, and I'm very resourceful. And so kind of had a bit of time here, and this thing was starting to kind of develop into something, and I felt like there was an opportunity there. And so just, bias to action, just thought I would see how I'd go about finding my first client. And my first LinkedIn ghostwriting client was a former boss who had his own management consultancy. I offered to write him 10 posts. He paid me $500, and that was kind of the starting point of, I can do this. Like, if I can find one client on LinkedIn, I'm sure I can find more. And I could see a lot of appeal in the remote solopreneur lifestyle, I guess. So that was kind of back end of 2022. Business has grown since then. A lot has happened, but that was very much the start of my professional LinkedIn journey, I guess you could say.
Very cool. So why LinkedIn? Like, for anybody who's owning or running an online business or planning to, why should LinkedIn be considered over other platforms, or at least in addition to other platforms?
Look, I think there's a couple of features that make LinkedIn a really great place to build your business. I think the first one is it being tied to your professional brand, I guess, your career, and you have to use your real name on there. You're going to have a photo on there, like in your career history is there. It brings a real transparency to the platform. So you can more easily kind of find people and figure out who's who and market to a specific audience. But also that informs the type of content and the way people behave and act on LinkedIn versus other platforms. You can't just anonymously, bash other people or create clickbait and all the other stuff that, like, for me, I'm not a social media person outside of LinkedIn. I really don't engage in the other platforms. But I find LinkedIn is almost like a safe space where that kind of transparency, there's more authenticity there and a lot of opportunity. Well over 1 billion users now worldwide. If you're selling a service that you can kind of sell to anyone in the world, especially B2B, it is a great place to be hanging out.
Let's talk about the best ways to use LinkedIn as a prospecting tool. And I'm going to back into content because I think we can have a deeper discussion around that. But I don't know about you or anybody listening today, but like on my LinkedIn, I get blown up all the time from just people prospecting on there, cold pitches, right? Just sliding in the DMs, or if I'm really good now about not accepting invitations. I don't just click yes on everything because I know that 9 out of 10 are just going to blow up my message inbox. And every time that happens, I miss an actual message from somebody who wants to actually engage, or, someone who's reaching out to me that's worthwhile. But the rest of it's just spam to me. And I think that even LinkedIn acknowledged this, maybe in a backhanded way, because they basically split your inbox in two. There's like, I don't remember what it's labeled. You can tell me, but it's like matters and doesn't matter. And then I never even see the other one, like that other doesn't matter section. So it's like, wow, thanks LinkedIn. You just really split, you created a spam folder and you still allowed all the spam. So like, what do you say about, what are best practices for using LinkedIn as a prospecting tool?
Yeah, you're spot on there. And that is a really common experience. Like the bar is really low in certain places when it comes to prospecting and outreach on LinkedIn. And so I think that creates opportunity if you approach it in a smart, respectful, human way. First thing I think is to be clear about, like, on your profile about what it is that you do and who you serve. And that then allows the people that you're reaching out to make an informed decision. So there's nothing worse than the kind of the vague headline that's a little bit hard to decipher, and you think, oh, this looks interesting, and then the pitch slap arrives straight away. So being clear and upfront about, I guess, who you serve and what you're there to do is a starting point. But my overarching advice is to think about any digital interaction as if you were like in a room with that person. If it was a networking event, for example, how would you approach walking up to someone you didn't know and starting a conversation? Being empathetic, being real, being human at the end of the day, I think is the key. And then, content, having some content that is fresh on your profile that gives an insight into what you're doing and what you're about is definitely a great way to kind of soften some of that outreach. But to kind of come back clearly to your point around prospecting, or the question around prospecting, I think that is one of the great tools that we have in LinkedIn. Is you can search by industry, by job title, by location if you need to, or by other keywords that are kind of relevant to your service. So you can actually get really laser focused at who you're trying to talk to. And that's one of the key things that I see the value in LinkedIn is for prospecting, is for developing a list of contacts, whether you're actively outreaching to them or you're just trying to build your network and your audience to then create content and build a longer term relationship. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
So do you recommend, or are you talking about the using of Sales Navigator or any of the additional paid tools that they have? Is there lots of benefit to that, or is there a lot you can accomplish for free on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so look, I invest in LinkedIn Premium. I've never used Sales Navigator for myself. Some clients definitely do use it, and there's some more functionality in there. I personally invest in LinkedIn Premium. The key reason is that then allows you to see who's viewed your profile, and that's a really good kind of high intent signal. And that's, you want to be able to reach out to those people one-to-one. So LinkedIn Premium is what I use to enable me to see who's kind of checking out what I'm up to. Beyond that, you can achieve a lot with the free version of LinkedIn. A lot of the search parameters are there and kind of everything you need definitely to get started. But at a certain point in time, LinkedIn Premium does help to go a little bit deeper.
Okay, so let's talk about, especially maybe we can speak to those who are just starting out on LinkedIn, or maybe they've had a profile for a while and now they're getting into business and they're at that stage where it's time to tell people about it. Using LinkedIn specifically, when it comes to your content, and
Yeah.
we kind of throw that term around when we say content, we're talking about what are you offering via the posting feature on your profile, but also we're also talking about being commenting and being engaging on other people's posts. So kind of guide us through, maybe if you have a framework of what is your definition of content on LinkedIn? How should it be structured? What should you talk about? Because I'm willing to bet most people are like, I'd love to post, but I don't even know, like, what do I have to
What to
say?
say?
Right?
Yep.
What do you say to
Yep.
folks that are in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that I think of as FOPO, the fear of posting online. A lot of people kind of start there. Many of us have had LinkedIn for a long time. It was just your CV online for a while, and there wasn't really any expectation of content on LinkedIn. So FOPO is real, and a lot of people starting out face that. The best way to push through your FOPO is, as you said, there commenting. So really nice, light lift, easy place to start. You might just start with leaving a really thoughtful, specific compliment on a post that you see in the feed. So steer clear of the great post or thanks for sharing, that kind of stuff, but take a specific thing that you liked and compliment the poster. That's a great way to get comfortable with, I guess, publishing content, so to speak, having your thoughts, viewed by other people on the platform, and you can really build from there. When we think about content creation as in publishing your own content from your own profile, I think there are three types of posts that we need to consider creating. The first is around awareness. So the goal of these posts is to reach as many eyeballs as you possibly can on the platform. They're typically going to be story-led posts. You might share a business milestone, you might share a personal struggle or a business struggle. You might write to yourself and where you were 2 years ago or 5 years ago. So narrative-led kind of awareness building content would be the first place. The next layer of content to think about is content that's going to build trust with your audience. So getting more specific and focused on who you're actually trying to reach and talk to on the platform, and then sharing your expertise there around the problem that you solve, the transformation that you provide. I think trust is where you want to spend most of your time creating content. That's the content that moves the needle the most with your target audience. And the third type of content that I think makes up a good kind of holistic strategy for LinkedIn is making an offer every now and then. Like I'm thinking about roughly 10 to 15% of the time, but actually making it really clear. This is who I serve. This is how you can work with me if you're interested. And this is kind of the transformation that I deliver, and a clear call to action. So if you're interested, if you've seen this and you're interested, here's what you can do next. Making that offer, making that invitation to work with you or subscribe to your newsletter, having some kind of call to action at the end is the third layer of your LinkedIn content strategy that kind of sets you up for success.
I love that. And I'm thinking back to, because for years in my business, I was always, I guess, afraid of content. Like, what do I have to say? I got to sit here and figure something out to write that people will like, or that makes me sound smart, or, and it usually resulted in me just not doing much. Or I'd go on like a month long tangent and I'd feel like I got a little bit of like something there. And then, but there's really nothing, no interaction or anything like that. And then I just quit. And it took me the longest time to realize the importance of being consistent on what you're doing when it comes to posting. And I can't remember who it was, maybe a mentor, I think one of my copywriting friends, they said people always overthink their content. It's not content, it's literally just documenting what you're doing and telling people about it. And there's
Yeah.
a great chance that there's a lot of authority content in what you're going to share with them. So do you agree with that type of statement when it comes to content creation? Because I think that's honestly, I feel that's the number one barrier to newer business owners or new people on LinkedIn, people who are newer to LinkedIn that understand they need to put themselves out there, but they're not sure how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a major blocker for a lot of people I see facing FOPO, thinking about showing up on LinkedIn more consistently. The thing that I realized after producing hundreds and hundreds of posts on LinkedIn at this point, the best content isn't created from scratch. It's just found. It's in the interactions that you're having with your customers. It's in the stuff that you're doing every day, to your point around like documenting what you're doing. So now I approach content on LinkedIn with the mindset of, where can I find content? Where can I harvest something that's already around me in my business, rather than staring at a blank page and trying to have a bright idea that I'm gonna write about. So now we have AI note takers in every call. Go back through your transcript, look at that question that the prospect asked you on your last sales call, the key deliverable, the thing that you help clients with, that they always ask you a question about or give you good feedback on. Like, write about that. You can even like literally take this, take screenshots and share parts of your process or how you work with clients. Like, give people a sneak peek on what it's like to work with you, and break down kind of what you do. So if you have that mindset of finding content rather than creating it, that can remove a lot of barriers to getting started. And then, one thing being social media, we have an expression kind of in Australia that today's headlines are tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper, and social media is the same. Like it whatever you post is gone in a couple of days in the feed. And so that mindset of continually iterating, showing up consistently, trying different things, and for better or worse, never letting any one post feel too important, is the best way to move in.
Because, yeah, I mean, especially like you said, once it's posted, it's out there, regardless if it gets crickets or if it gets blown up. Now, if it goes viral, then congratulations, you struck oil on this one. But the vast majority of your posts are not going viral. They're not going to, not to say that they're not useful, but I think in the aggregate, if somebody is looking you up, like I think LinkedIn is a great authority platform for you, because if somebody, whether they find you through LinkedIn or not, they might end up on LinkedIn to look you up, look into you, see if you are who you say you are. And if you have a gallery of content, of posts that include not only sharing your personality and your knowledge and providing value, including calls to action, showing that you know what you're doing, now your account isn't just for outreach and for getting new clients, it's for your authority. And honestly, the longer you're in business, people will figure this out if they've not been in business very long or haven't been in business yet. The longer you're there, the more trust you're going to build, as long as you're providing great service and having happy customers. So when it comes to, I guess the mindset around posting on LinkedIn, are you recommending that it's better to have a short memory? Don't spend a crazy amount of time trying to perfect a post. Don't burn 2 hours on a post when in reality it might get crickets anyway.
Yeah, look, my perspective on LinkedIn is that I think of it kind of like the One Ring from Lord of the Rings. Incredibly powerful tool, but if you spend too much time on it, it will turn you into Gollum. And so, my vision and how I work with clients is to do what you need to do on LinkedIn in as little time as possible. So absolutely, you get better at not overthinking. The FOPO disappears and you start to get more confident. But go shopping, go finding content rather than trying to stare at a blank page and invent something from scratch. And then, as you said, once it's out there, just let it go and let it be what it is. I think as well, around consistency, the best routine or habit around content is the one that you can stick to, like any habit. And so if you've never posted on LinkedIn before, you might want to just start with sharing a few thoughtful comments, for a week, a couple of weeks. Then you might think about creating one post a week, taking baby steps to gradually build a habit, a routine that you can stick to, that's not overwhelming or like a yo-yo diet. And at the end of the day, it's just social media.
Mm-hmm. Are your most successful clients, are there posts like going viral and getting tons of likes and comments and clicks and shares, or is there more of a, it's kind of, you need to look at it holistically as a package over time, where you started from 0 and then you got 1 like, and then you got 10, and then you got like, what is the metrics that somebody should be looking at when they're starting posting on LinkedIn? Because especially if you've never done it before, it's going to be crickets for a while. Like, there's an algorithm involved here, which we haven't even talked about. that takes time to break into. So can you expound upon that? I don't even know where I was going with that, but I think it's
Yeah.
something that's worth talking about.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the V word, this idea of going viral. 9 out of 10 clients that I speak to in the early stages, that is kind of their goal, that is their success measure. I don't think I've ever written a post for myself, for my own account, that's gone viral. And the thing about going viral is that, yes, it will get you a very wide array of awareness. Like, that's what viral means. But it's very hard to go viral with a post that has real value, that is specifically talking to your audience. By definition, it has general appeal. And so what that means for a business point of view is, unless you're selling like a $97 course or a low ticket item, virality is not actually what you're chasing here. Like, what you're chasing is, if you could reach one of your ideal customer that's a high value client, and you can make them think differently, you can make them realize, that one person, that you can solve their problem and encourage them to join your newsletter or send you a DM, you might get 2 likes on that post. I've had leads come in from 0 likes or 1 like, but I reached the right person and unlocked something there. So virality is definitely, strokes the ego. It's that kind of vanity metric, the ultimate vanity metric. But if you have a B2B offer and a mid to high ticket offer, in my experience, the viral content is not what leads to leads or pipeline or sales. And so is not the right thing to be looking at. I'm much more focused on, how can you create something that talks to one person and flicks off a light bulb in their head. If that's your target audience, your ideal customer.
Yeah, I've noticed on my LinkedIn. So I started focusing on LinkedIn as my platform about a year and a half ago, just because I knew I needed to, and I was sporadically on and off, and I wasn't really heavy on any other platform. And I do not like being on social media, so LinkedIn's like the one I'll be on.
Yeah.
I noticed that when people would reach out to me, like meaningful reach outs, like somebody that would possibly be a client for me, or someone that wanted to be involved in marketing somehow or talk about the podcast, they would find me on LinkedIn, but they would not have, I guess, physically engaged with my posts. They'll have been like, "Oh, I've been seeing your posts. I've been tracking your posts." But then I'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to go look at my views." And none of them liked it or commented or shared on it. They were just kind of along the wall watching. But they were the ones who reached out. So it's almost like a post has, I don't know, 5 likes on it, maybe 1 share and a comment, maybe 2 comments. But I'd have 3 people that reached out that said, "Oh, I saw that, and that actually really spoke to me. And I want to talk about X, Y, and Z."
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of
So
there.
the LinkedIn lurker is a real phenomenon, and we've all experienced this in our own use of LinkedIn. There'll be stuff that you scroll through the feed, you might read it all the way to the end, you think that's interesting, like that's relevant, but again, because it's tied to your professional profile and your name, particularly if you see content that's around a pain point or a problem, you may not want to kind of signal to the world above the surface that you're suffering from that, you're facing that problem, or that you've got that challenge. And so you might not like it or comment on it, but that light bulb does go off somewhere inside your head, and you've kind of put that person, the creator of that post, you've put them in that basket of, like, this person gets what I'm going through. That's the authority piece. And so absolutely, I would say the majority of people that end up reaching out to me have never shown any kind of visible sign of interaction on the content. And this is one of the key things when we think about, like, profile viewers, why it's such a great unlock to be able to see those people that have looked at your profile. So if you're starting to see someone that's showing up and checking out your profile once, twice, a few times, that might be as far as they take it on LinkedIn. Like, they may not feel confident enough to actually reach out. And so I think it's really important to have a strong kind of one-to-one outreach strategy for those hand raisers, those people that show some level of intent on your profile.
Do you have recommendations for how to improve your messaging or improve your messaging so that the algorithms will pick you up? And by pick you up, I don't mean going viral. I mean so that the algorithm understands who they ought to show your stuff to. Now, of course, that's going to be somewhat limited to who you're connected with, and if anybody engages with it, even more so as just like stopping scrolling, right? Like LinkedIn counts that as an engagement. What advice do you have for someone in terms of I guess, a game plan for writing those posts so that they can hopefully start encouraging LinkedIn to show it to the right people?
Yeah. So there are two key things that come to mind around this. The first is a little bit of not a hack. I don't like the word hack, but to kind of appease the algorithm. LinkedIn loves smiling faces. The LinkedIn selfie is another thing that you will see a lot. Once you start looking for it, you'll see a lot of people kind of posting pictures of themselves to reach more people. That's a strategy or a tactic that I use, particularly at that kind of awareness layer of your content strategy. It's important, especially for me, like as a solopreneur. I am the brand. I want people to know me and kind of learn a little bit about me and my life. So I think that would be the first kind of simple one, is consider adding photos or videos that kind of reflect you. The algorithm will like that. The other one, which is a little bit kind of harder and more nuanced, but equally important, is what we call the hook in copywriting. So those 2 to 3 lines that are shown above the fold, or above that like see more button.
Mm-hmm.
That's really valuable real estate. So LinkedIn's algorithm is watching for how many people that are shown this post, how many go on to click see more and continue reading. It takes that as a really key sign of valuable content. So what that means, your hook is super important to get people to open the fold and see what comes after. A couple of strategies around this. Really specific numbers. Our brains are drawn to specific numbers. They don't have to be big numbers. They can be small numbers, but just really unusually specific numbers. If you can open a loop in people's minds, if you can kind of pose a question that our brain triggers and go, how does this story end? Or this doesn't quite, like, there's a loop that opens in your brain and your brain just wants to close it. So you'll click to see more. And the third kind of strategy I see around this is what we call a pattern interrupt. So putting something, might be 2 ideas juxtaposed that don't make sense sitting next to each other, and they interrupt the pattern, or something that you wouldn't typically see on LinkedIn. Like those kind of 3 strategies for your hooks are a great way to then encourage people to see more. That tells the algorithm you've got valuable content. And I think it's just good practice as well. Like if we think about social media and the bombardment of information that's out there, it's actually an important skill to be able to get to the most important point of your message really quickly and kind of serve that up front, respect people's time, understand, empathy, where people are browsing LinkedIn, how they're browsing. So thinking about your hook is actually a forcing function to help you create better content.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that also lends itself to just the activity of creating your posts leads to you, the more you write out your knowledge, the more you share it. It's just kind of like the old adage, like the best way to learn is by teaching. The best way to continually improve upon what you learn and improve your knowledge itself is just to get it out on not paper, but out in the post box, right? And share it with others. So I think that fits in there perfectly. Are hashtags still a big thing on LinkedIn? Are those important? Do you know is there any data that says you ought to still use hashtags on LinkedIn?
No. So hashtags for a while were a thing on LinkedIn. They don't serve any like algorithmic purpose anymore. Like you can still search by hashtags. I see some creators out there using hashtags as a way to recall their previous content, like so they can easily find old stuff that they've written. But there is, from the data and the stats that I've seen from the people that know this space really well, there's no evidence to suggest, like, hashtags are kind of actively being moved away from by LinkedIn. So no benefit to focusing on hashtags.
Does LinkedIn put any weight on connections versus follows? To me, those seem like one and the same, but they're 2 different actions.
Yeah. So the follow came into effect probably 3 years ago now, 2 to 3 years ago now. Used to be an optional thing. Now it's mandatory. We are certainly seeing some shifts in the algorithm. I'm not a data scientist, but if you think about TikTok, Insta, and Facebook, they've all over the years shifted their algorithm to really focus on that interest-based content. So who you're connected with, your own network, doesn't really matter on those platforms. And TikTok, obviously, we don't have any contacts. You just get served up stuff that is interesting to a wide audience. LinkedIn historically was all about who is in your network and serving you content from your community, like Facebook used to be way back. that's starting to shift. It is a shift towards more viral tending content, more interest-led content versus like what is Brian in my network talking about at the moment. So, and that's driven by the follower thing as well. So big creators, you know, the linked influencers of the world, people with big followings, you're starting to see more and more of their stuff, whether or not you're connected to them. And so this algorithm shift is kind of ongoing. Change is the only constant. It's a tricky space to be sometimes.
What about video content? Like, does LinkedIn, like, should I create a post, but make the majority of my information be in the video? Like like you said, like a LinkedIn selfie, but do a video?
Yeah.
Or should I leave most of my information in the post and just do an image? Or should I just put a little teaser in the video? Like, do you have any idea which one is a better use of your time if you're going to be creating this content?
Yeah, absolutely. So vertical video has arrived on LinkedIn. You know, you've got the video feed there on the app. Traffic is going up in the video space. So I definitely see video as a great growth opportunity on LinkedIn. The way I'm approaching video and helping clients approach video is you need that really strong thumbnail, like that visual hook that gets them into the video. That is where you want to be delivering kind of the body of the message, I would say, like the core content, and then your caption or the copy that sits above the video might either be like a small sum up of that or specifically the call to action. So the journey would be like watch the video, hopefully to the end. You might have a call to action on the end of the video, then up in the caption, kind of a follow up or repeat the call to action with a short summary of the video.
Okay. So are you more in favor of using your posts and your content to drive an audience towards you, or do you think LinkedIn is still a useful place for what we were talking about earlier with prospecting? You know, what's your opinion on which way is the better approach?
Yeah. So look, I think a large majority of the audience on LinkedIn are lurkers, and so your outreach is going to be really important. If you can give people a light lift way to, like a pull tactic, I guess, like join my newsletter, visit my website, things like that can work quite well, and you can bring them off platform and start to nurture them and build the relationship there. But absolutely, outreach is the biggest gap that I see. Like I think most people have got their kind of calls to action down pat, but a lot of people are quite scared about doing outreach the wrong way, and so I see that as a big opportunity. The best way that I think about approaching outreach is a technique or an idea called present commonality. Probably the best way to explain this would be if I actually put you on the spot with a scenario. So let's imagine that you're going to a wedding. You're going to this wedding by yourself and you've arrived a little bit early, and you look around and you realize that you don't know anyone else that's at this wedding. So you're going to sit down next to someone new. If you wanted to spark up a conversation with someone new at a wedding, what kind of question might you ask them?
If I'm going to spark up a conversation at a wedding, I would ask them how they know the bride or groom.
Exactly. So 9 out of 10 people will say that, something along those lines. And that is present commonality. The thing that you've got in common is the couple, the bride and the groom. And so it's a great place to start a conversation. On LinkedIn, what that looks like is the present commonality is the action that they've taken. So if they've viewed your profile, if they liked your post, if they commented on your post. So my simple kind of no cringe, no sleaze outreach message on LinkedIn would be, hey, Brian, thanks for checking out my profile, present commonality. And then I just want to hand you the microphone. Did anything stand out? That would be the kind of follow-up part of the message. Now, I've created just a platform for you. If there was something that stood out, if you had a reason for looking, you've kind of got the space to respond if you want. We haven't pushed anything, we haven't pitched anything, but you've opened the door for a conversation. And that's the approach that I see working really well on LinkedIn. I see a huge opportunity there. There is so much pitch slapping. There is so much bad behavior, I guess, when it comes to outreach, that a strategy like that using present commonality is a real win for clients.
So should you be adding people to your network, or I guess following people or adding them as a connection willy-nilly, or is there a strategy behind should you Should you leave it towards, let me put out my content, let people come to me? Should I find people that I want to consider targets or I just want to
Yep.
connect with?
Yep.
What's your recommendation there?
Yeah, I think when it comes to connections, you definitely want to be connecting with people that it makes sense for you and your business. So your ideal client or influencers, buyers, decision makers, like someone in the sphere of who you're trying to talk to. I think that makes sense for your connections, and that's what's going to allow you to do the outreach message we were just talking about. When it comes to followers, I see that more as how you kind of curate your feed. So the types of content that you're going to want to see. Again, if your target audience is active on LinkedIn, you want to be seeing their content in your feed. So by connecting with them, you'll follow them as well, and you'll be more likely to see more of that type of content. So following, I would say, find key sort of influential people that talk about what you talk about. They can be competitors or similar service providers. Because you want that kind of content to appear in your feed, so you can then be leaving your comments regularly. You can be showing up where your target audience is hanging out, even if it's not on your profile.
Do you recommend leaving a note when you send a connection request? I know LinkedIn defaults to, would you like to send a note? Do you recommend doing that?
Yeah, so that outreach message, the present comment, like if they've shown some intent, if they've raised their hand in some way, I would absolutely take that opportunity to open a conversation. And that thanks for doing XYZ, did anything stand out, would be my go-to. If it's cold, like if there's no previous interaction between you, if you're showing up with content regularly, just adding them into your network is going to show them your content early on. So you can then lean on your content to kind of do some of the heavy lifting of gradually warming them up. So you don't necessarily have to go out with a proactive message. You can just be comfortable that your content is going to appear in their feed, especially after you've just connected.
Gotcha. So I know when I probably half the time when I send out a connection request, and it's usually just because I'm curious about what they do, or they look like somebody who I should just be in contact, excuse me, in their world, or I want to view their content. Sometimes I'll just drop a quick note like, "Hey, so and so, just saw your stuff on LinkedIn. Would love to get more of it as a connection here." Like something super simple. It's not salesy because I don't sell anything on, like, I don't get on LinkedIn and promote myself to someone in a DM because I hate it when it's done to me. I'm not doing anything close to that myself on there, but I will just send like you said, the present commonality, or just being a good human.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Brian. I just wanted to follow your content. Hope you accept.
Yeah, totally, man. I think that's, as much as there are strategies and systems and ways you can think about this, I think fundamentally, trust your gut. And if it feels natural and normal and there's no, you're being, I guess, just real about it, go for it.
Yeah. So just be a real human on LinkedIn, right, guys? Don't be spammy. Don't be sending out massive connections requests and then just blowing up the DMs afterwards. Nobody wants that. There's plenty of people out there doing that. Follow Joe's advice here and document your journey and share it with people. I think that's maybe one of the best ways we could sum it up here. But Joe, you're a busy man. I know I got to get you going. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think this is a ton of valuable information for those who maybe you're on LinkedIn, maybe you're considering being on LinkedIn, maybe you're opening your business or about to open your business. Think about LinkedIn as an opportunity, especially if you're in the online space, as a great place to grow your presence and grow your business. So, Joe, I want to make sure anybody out there who's listening, if they want to reach out to you, get in contact with you, maybe they have questions or maybe they be interested in utilizing your services, what's the best way to do that? I'm going to guess LinkedIn, but I'm going to let you take the microphone on this one.
So yeah, you can absolutely find me on LinkedIn. But I do have my LinkedIn playbook, like essentially everything I've learned about LinkedIn over the last few years, available to my email audience. So if you go to joemckay.info, that's JOEMCKAY.info. If you join my weekly email, which is Solo Success School, you'll get my LinkedIn playbook in your inbox. And that's got everything we talked about today, a whole bunch more. That is kind of my all-in-one resource for everything LinkedIn. So if you're interested in that, head over to my website and grab that for yourself.
All right, perfect. We'll reference that in the show notes. And thanks again, man. This has been awesome. We wish you the best with your business in the remainder of 2025 here.
Thanks so much, Brian. Good to chat to you.
My pleasure.